Welcome, all. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to talk about the May 2023 astrology, what to anticipate as we enter into May, and address some of the shifts happening. So, just to recap a little bit, we had an eclipse, a solar eclipse on April 20th, 2023. And you may have noticed around that time more passings than usual, and by that I mean deaths, and also just more collective upheaval, as eclipses are known to kind of usher in, which we saw with some of the fighting in the Middle East, of course, the conflict in Ukraine, and then just an increase in sudden deaths is very common with eclipses. And it's not to be like doom and gloom, but we can think of eclipses, and particularly the window between eclipses. I feel like it's as though the universe is blinking its eyes, and it's darkness that allows a transference of energy. And a lot of the time, it's the light being obscured. And so, light is vital force. And so, it's a time where it's, I think, more easy for people to leave the body. And so there can be that kind of upset, felt in a collective way. And sometimes it presents as just lower energy, feeling more depleted, feeling like you don't have the same vital force as you usually do, particularly because these eclipses that we're having on the 20th and then May 5th, respectively, are coinciding with Mercury retrograde. So I believe the May 5th eclipse is going to bring about definite shocking events on a world scale, because it is going to be with the sun of the eclipse conjunct Uranus. And so it's just something to be prepared for and not get swept into, and just be aware that you might not have the maybe concentration or energy allotted to putting a lot on your plate. And I would recommend against doing so if you can, if you have that luxury. It's a really good time too, with Pluto will be retrograde starting on May 1st. So it's a very introspective time. And really, the whole month of May has that kind of feeling to it, particularly the second half of the month, where we have most of the planets in feminine signs. So it's a very, very yin energy as we get into the second half of May, with pretty big astrological transformations happening with it. So, as I mentioned, Mercury has been retrograde, and it will turn station direct on May 14th. So, beginning May 14th, and I'll talk on some specific dates after that that are really good for business dealings and things like that. Beginning on the 14th is business as usual, in the sense of if you've been needing to relocate or move houses or where you're staying or living, doing so after the 14th is recommended. And also, say you just have like a contract you want to get started, this these dates after the 14th would be a time to do that. I would abstain from doing it before then, just because it doesn't necessarily mean it's not gonna doesn't mean it's gonna go horribly if you, for instance, buy a piece of property on May 5th or whatever, if that was, your flow. But just be prepared that there might be unexpected delays, unexpected little hiccups, or potentially it's a shorter term type of energy than if you wait for Mercury to be direct. So typically, I try not to sign any formal agreements until Mercury is direct, or make any really big purchase that needs to be a kind of more lasting thing. Pluto retrograde, I feel like it's a time when things come to the surface, potentially secrets come to the surface on a collective scale, or information is revealed. Whenever a malefic, quote unquote, planet is retrograde, it intensifies the effects. And Pluto is all about the underworld. So bringing that which is hidden, particularly when it's retrograde, it's churning up, you could say, like all the sediment of hidden things. And so that can be really good for introspection. On a collective level, I do believe it might bring some things to light. Pluto in Capricorn, because Pluto kind of had a little preview into Aquarius, but Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn is wanting to really transform these traditional structures and organizations and ways that we've created society. And so we're seeing a lot of transformation, particularly now that Pluto went to Aquarius. For instance, like ChatGPT, like that's all I've been hearing about for the past few weeks, like month, um, where we're seeing these great developments in AI, where people are using ChatGPT now instead of Google, and we're interfacing with artificial consciousness in a more profound way and a more widespread way. Where for me, it's a little trippy because I think we're going to get to a point where we're not going to know. Because everyone I hear talking about it, it's like, of course, in the realm of advertising or how to make money. So people are like, it's great. You can have ChatGPT write articles for you. And it brings up, for me, it raises like ethical questions like, well, at what point are you even putting your own kind of intellectual thought into it, or how much are you relying on this tool, allowing it to kind of make people almost like intellectually lazy? That's just my stance on it. But I also recognize that any tool, it's like the intention that we put into it. So it's something we can work with, but at what point will it use us? That's always the question with when there's kind of like all the rage about something new that people feel can help make a shortcut or cut corners. My question's always like, well, if you're cutting these corners, what's the repercussions of that? And if ChatGPT can write your papers for you, and it can find your clients for you, and it could do all this stuff for you. It's like, how much reliance are we putting on this tool, and how much of our own kind of like skills are we still honing? All right, I'm going to get into the days of intensity for the month of May. So on May 4th, we have the moon squaring Pluto and Venus squaring Neptune. This is a kind of intense day. I wouldn't, whenever Venus square Neptune, I would advise refraining from like any intense substances or intense doses of a medication or whatever, because there's just a greater chance with hard aspects to Neptune and Pluto of like taking too much. We also have, and potentially Venus square Neptune can kind of be a deceptive energy. It's not the most forthcoming. On May 5th is when we have the full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. It's at 14 degrees, 58 minutes of Scorpio. And as I mentioned, the sun is conjoining Uranus. So this can be disruptive, shocking events. And because it's on that Taurus Scorpio axis, that can definitely look like earthquakes. That can definitely look like earthquakes that set off big waves, right? Because Scorpio does represent water. And so a very intense energy indeed. And just lay low on that day if you can. Don't push yourself too hard, because it can feel really, really draining. On the 11th, we have the Aquarius moon conjunct Pluto, and we've got moon squaring Uranus. Moon square Uranus is abrupt, erratic kind of energy. On the 12th, Jupiter will actually go to 29 degrees Aries, and this is important because for this kind of short window of time, the 12th through I think about around the 20th of May, we have an activation of the last eclipse we had. So whenever a planet goes to that degree point that we had an eclipse, a recent eclipse of within the past 6 months, it activates that energy. So whatever kind of breakthrough or shocking thing that happened with the 20th eclipse, there can be kind of like a follow-up to that energy. And so it's really important to look, do you have any important planets or degrees or your rising sign or nodes near 29 Aries? Because if so, you're still in the thick of like these big transformations that are activated by this eclipse. And I've just noticed, like, I work in healing profession. I do some body work and work. I have a lot of friends that do massage, healing work, etc. And they've noticed like such an uptick in clients around this time. And it's important if you do that kind of work to not forget to take care of yourself because you can definitely burn out. And it's interesting because whether it's like people who do intuitive work or counseling or body work, there's just more people needing assistance or just needing, even friends you might find just needing to vent more than usual, because eclipses can activate some drama for us beings. And so just make sure you're supporting yourself. It's always important to fill your own cup before you can kind of like give that energy out to others. And, sleeping, taking naps, getting to sleep early if you can, doing all the measures that you're taking care of your body to the utmost, because people might be coming to you more and more for kind of help or assistance. On the 17th of May, we've got the stellium in, I'm blanking on what sign it is on the 17th, but it's a stellium, I think, in Taurus still, squaring Pluto. So we have most of the planets squaring Pluto on that day, the 17th. So it is a day of intensity indeed. There's a lot of hard aspects. Yeah, it's all the planets in Taurus, Moon, Jupiter, the North Node, or what they call Rahu, and Mercury squaring Pluto. So it's a definite day of friction. On the 22nd, we have Mars squaring Jupiter. This can feel like it's like a debating kind of energy because Jupiter represents the mind, belief systems, higher learning, and Mars is combative energy, assertive energy. So this can be a very competitive kind of day. And it might be a day where if you get into an argument or kind of a debate with someone that no one wants to really back down off their position. So just keep that in mind. On the 24th and the 25th, we have the moon and Mars both conjunct in Leo, opposing Pluto. So it's a lot of kind of aggro energy that day as well. Moon Mars, it's just the kind of thing where people are more in a rush. People are feeling a little more impulsive and maybe um, just a little more combative, especially because it'll be opposite Pluto. And then on the 31st, we have the moon squaring Venus, moon squaring Pluto, and Venus opposite Pluto. So there's what we call like a T square that day. That can bring a lot of like relationship stuff up to the surface. Like maybe things that have been like below the surface for a while can like be simmered to the surface when we have, that opposition taking place of Venus and Pluto, which can ultimately be constructive, right? We can use that as a way to create a bridge or to get clearer understanding, but just watch out for how you're going about bringing it up. Because sometimes when we have these days of intensity, it's just like something triggers us, right? And then maybe we could have resolved it in a more peaceful way, but because the energy is just ripe for it, it leads to a kind of just conflict that we could maybe avoid with some of this awareness. I think knowing days of intensity allow us to have more patience for people, if we deal with the public or, just going about our life in our workplaces and in our interpersonal relationships. So let's move into the days of harmony for May. On May 12th, we have Mercury sextiling Saturn and Venus trine Saturn. This is really nice flow of energy for maybe going deep, deep conversations. I feel like this would be a good day for like a deep conversation with someone. Good kind of aspects for like counseling or just trying to like understand someone's perspective on something. Constructive communication is what I think of Mercury sextile Saturn, and Venus trining Saturn is a sense of kind of like devotion. Keep in mind, Mercury is still retrograde on the 12th. We're going to have another Mercury harmony with Saturn on the 18th, though. We have Mercury in Taurus. Sorry, I wrote trine, but it's really sextile Saturn on the 18th. And that's going to be a really good day to go forth in a contract. If you've been like kind of holding off on that, that would be a good time to like sign the paperwork. That would be a good time to sign the new lease, formalize any agreement on that day, because we have the planet of communication in the very grounded sign of Taurus, making a very harmonious aspect to Saturn, which represents longevity and building things over time. The 15th, we have Mars trining Neptune. This is a very visionary aspect. Actually, in fact, many visionary painters have Mars Neptune harmonious aspects. I've noticed like a lot of the very like psychedelic painters have that. Um, I like to look at astrology in relation to art movements, and that was something that I found. Like Alex Gray has that, and a lot of other visionary artists. So on the 21st, we have the Sun sextiling Mars and the Sun trining Pluto. So at that point on the 21st, the Sun has moved into Gemini, and we're getting kind of a boost of energy on that day. On the 26th, we have Venus sextiling Uranus. Venus in Cancer. I'll talk about Venus in Cancer for the key dates for the month, but Venus is a lot more amicable in Cancer than Gemini. And Venus in Cancer sextiling Uranus is, I was thinking like chance encounters or unexpected money. You know, it's Venusian things that are unexpected, and probably pleasant Venusian things, because Venus is pretty content in the sign of Cancer. It's a very nurturing energy, and Venus is a very nurturing planet. So the two resonate well. And this could be, yeah, a really nice romantic aspect for like a date. I know people tend to get married a lot in the spring. Obviously, you would have probably planned your wedding a while ago, but if your wedding happens to be on May 26th, that's a really nice aspect. And maybe that's a day people will elope or something, because Venus Uranus can be kind of like an unexpected, sudden, romantic type energy. Alrighty. So the key dates to just summarize for May: Pluto turns retrograde on the 1st. So this is going even more inward than we already have, being eclipse season, being Mercury retrograde. It's bringing things to the surface that really needs to be released. I believe Pluto goes retrograde about once a year. So it's a yearly thing, but it's a good time to just detoxify, so to speak, or cut any cords that need to be cut, like do that kind of inner spring cleaning, if you will. It will stay retrograde, I think, for like 5 months though. So it spans a large chunk of the year. And I think it's October where it goes direct again. But yeah, it's just a time where I believe on a collective level, things might come to the surface. Like deeper truths can be revealed when Pluto is retrograde. On May 5th, we've got the full moon, lunar eclipse, and Scorpio at 14 degrees Scorpio. If you have personal planets or angles around 14 degrees Scorpio, tighter the orb, the more pronounced. So the fixed signs are Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius. If you have planets around that point, this eclipse, depending on what houses it's falling in, is going to have more of a profound impact on your life in an obvious way. On the 7th, Venus enters into Cancer. Now, in Jyotish or Vedic astrology, Venus in Cancer is considered exalted. It's not necessarily exalted in Western astrology, but it's seen to make sense, right? Because elementally, those two planets are both, or the planet and the sign energy are compatible on an elemental level. They're both like moist planets. And as I mentioned, they're both very nurturing. So it's kind of nice that right before Mother's Day, we have Venus entering into Cancer. It can be a good time period to spend time with loved ones, feel into more familial energy, whether through friends or actual family. On the 16th, Jupiter enters into Taurus. So this can be a little, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of like a, maybe indulgent energy is the word. Maybe be mindful of like overspending, because whatever Jupiter kind of enters into, it expands that energy. It could also look like on a more economic level, inflation. So it's something to keep in mind, especially because we have an eclipse this month, and the new moon is also kind of a new moon triggering economic things, resources happening in Taurus. That new moon's on the 19th, and this is excellent for planning and planting seeds, literally and figuratively. So if you haven't already started your garden, this is a very good day to do so, to literally sow your seeds or transplant the seeds if you need to, because new moons allow um, the energy to kind of like, especially in Taurus, to like go deep into the earth and be fruitful, being that it's a very fertile sign. And then on the 20th, we have Mars entering into Leo. Now, Mars in Leo, to me, it makes more sense than Mars in Gemini, in the respect that those two energies those two energies are more harmonious, right? Mars and Gemini can be really scattered. Mars and Leo, it's like entering the fixed fire of Leo, which is very a devoted energy. It's very passionate, and it's very playful as well. So it can be a good time to reconnect with your passions, connect with your inner child, and do things that bring you joy, do things that make you feel good, especially because some of these other heavier energies happening this month. It's always good to connect with humor and lightheartedness to offset some of the more intense energies. So, this is my forecast for May, and I'm a little late getting it out, but better late than never. I honestly didn't feel like doing it at all, because I've just been feeling like tired. And with all the planets right now in Taurus, I've been very present, and I haven't really felt the need to really talk at all much. Just being more present with what's happening in the moment, which is really fun. But then all the Capricorn in me is wants to be committed and dedicated to what I'm doing here. So I couldn't skip a month. It just didn't feel right. So yeah, if you guys have any notes for the month, I really appreciate it. If you want a consultation, that's available on my website. I do natal chart readings, I do couple synastry readings. I also do date selection. So if you have like an important ceremony that you're having, or there's an important date you need to do something for your business, or even conceive of a business, like start your business. So any important start dates, astrology is really practical for picking and selecting a more auspicious time for that. And seeing an astrologer can be helpful because I can actually relate the date specifically to your own natal chart. So if you're curious about that, or even just selecting good dates for travel as well, you can find all that at radiantguidance.com. You can book through there. And depending on the type of consultation, I'll need a certain information ahead of time. But I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you have a beautiful month, and sending you off with good vibes. Have a beautiful day.